Welcome back to In Depth with Academia. I'm Richard, CEO of academia.edu, and usual, I'm here to bring you front row access to some of the most exciting, provocative, or just quirky ideas coming out of academic research right now. Today, we're diving into a fascinating paper called Intelligence Theory, a Structural of Conscious Systems by Rajiv Me. Just say up front, I'm presenting this paper from a neutral. I'm not endorsing, criticizing, or declaring it the final word on consciousness. I'm just inviting you to explore it to see what lights might be switched on in your own thinking. Big Singh's work tackles is one that frankly has haunted people for centuries. What makes an intelligent system actually conscious? In the age of machines' faces, translating languages, beating humans at chess, but do any of them actually know they exist? Where does selfhood come from? Why does some information processing feel self-aware when others don't? Huge questions. Most theories, like the global workspace theory, integrated information theory, higher order thought, predictive processing, they each get at a piece of the puzzle. Maybe how brain areas share information, or how much information is integrated, or how we predict and model our environments. But, as Singh argues, they don't really offer a general structural principle that unifies all these features, explaining how an intelligent system continuously knits itself together as the same self as it keeps changing. And that's where recursive intelligence theory, or RIT, comes in. This is what the paper proposes. Consciousness arises not complexity alone or a particular biological substrate, but from an information processing system's ability to recursively include representations of its evolving in its ongoing computations. In other words, conscious isn't just modeling the world, but modeling itself over, each time updating that self-model and letting it influence what comes next. This recursive self-referential loop provides backbone for persistent identity and cognition across. Let me put it a little more simply. Imagine a system that constantly consults and updates a model of itself as it thinks and acts. Each new decision isn't just based on previous actions, but on a current representation of who am I right now, what did I just do? That self-understanding, recursively built and dynamically stabilized, gives rise to the phenomenon called consciousness. To support this, Singh walks the reader through a structured, by-step theoretical build-up. There's a formal, axiomatic basis. Intelligence is about informational organization. Reflexivity appears when model their own. Continuity develops when ongoing self-models predict their own states. Consciousness emerges when these recursive stabilize, and then, at the highest level, systems self-eating, adding their own update rules. That's metacognition. It gets a bit mathy at points. The recursive intelligence equation, and even quantifiable ways to measure things like recursive depth and stability. Here's the upshot. A system characterized by a tractor, an informational dynamic that keeps self-identity coherent change. It's not a frozen essence, but a self-stabilizing process. Like a flame, it keeps its recognizable shape, even though the molecules are constantly moving. So why does this matter to you? Well, for one thing, it changes the way we think about mind, intelligence, and all the debates about artificial consciousness. IT don't look for magic substances or more and complex. Instead, look for recursive architectures, systems that include, maintain, and update internal models of themselves, and this pushes the conversation from our ever to be conscious to under what structural conditions does consciousness emerge, regardless what the system made of. Now, what about practical testability? Singh points out that this theory makes specific predictions, like, for example, ing up AI model size without adding recursive self-modeling shouldn't result in artificial consciousness. Instead, it'll just get better at tasks, but no more self-aware. Conversely, even a relatively modest system with robust, recursive, self-refer architecture might begin to display features of agency, continuity, and perhaps intrinsic explainability. A system that can tell you why it did because it has an explicit self-model console. I mention the of hood as a stabilized process time has implications for everything from ethics to theories of personal identity. If consciousness is fundamentally organizational rather than material, then consciousness could emerge wherever these recursive, stable patterns arise, whether that's in silicon, biological tissues, or maybe something haven't thought of yet. I mean, I guess you could imagine a theoretical swarm of nanobots as long as they can recursively model and stabilize. But, okay, maybe that's rabbit hole for another podcast. Anyway, let's steer us back. This doesn't mean the theory is proven, or the last word. It's a conceptual framework proposing testable directions for unifying philosophy of mind, information theory, and architecture. The paper encourages us of consciousness as a dynamic equilibrium of recursively self-referential, not just a quantity of information, but way information is processed and maintained through time. So as you mull over debates about artificial intelligence, mind, or even own of consciousness, maybe ask, is there a recursive self-model at work? How stable is it? Is there meta-evaluation happening? You don't have to agree with all this, but it's an intriguing for thinking about both what we are and what intelligence systems could become. Remember, academic research is always, I'm here to help you explore, not decree what's reflecting, keep questioning, who knows what you'll discover next. That's it for this episode, In Depth with Academia. Thanks for next time.